Are you looking to improve your wrist wrap game to help you bench press more? Well, I've got you covered here today. Let's get to it. Hey there, Brandon Smitley here from Thirst Gym. Today I'm going to help you learn how to wrap your wrist for the bench press to the best of your ability so you can hit a bench press PR. Now I know that this is necessarily not going to lift the weight for you. However, having a limp dick wrist is never going to be a good thing to help you bench press more. So let me give you some tips here on how to use these properly so you can hit a bench press PR. All right, so I've got my pair of wrist wraps here. I'm gonna briefly talk about the construction of them and how they're made first, and then we'll kind of go into how you actually use them. So usually you're going to have your thumb loop piece here where you can actually put your thumb into it or hold on to it. We'll kind of talk about the differences there here in a little bit. The other thing is you're gonna have your piece of Velcro and then the piece that's going to attach. Now, most wrist wraps are going to usually be the option of being what I would call stretchy, so where they actually have a lot of give, or a cast-like, where they're gonna be less to give and they're actually gonna be super thick and hard. Now, usually the casts are gonna come for those that usually bench press a significant amount of weight or use gear, so usually lifting in the 5, 6, 7, 800, maybe even 1,000 pounds. Usually you're gonna have a cast-based wrist strap there. Most people, other than that, are gonna use a stretchier kind because then they can get more revolutions from that and they're not handling as heavy loads on their wrists. The other option is that you're gonna have usually a 60 centimeter or an 80 centimeter based option. Pick the one that works best for your federation first and foremost, but then if you're not competing, then just pick whatever one you happen to prefer. Usually if you want more evolutions, you obviously want the longer wrist wrap, but at the end of the day, it's really personal preference. I usually drift more towards the 60 centimeters because they're usually more compliant in any federation. I don't have to worry about it. I can always train with the same wrap, but I have used 80 centimeter ones when I've competed equipped as well. And so the main difference again is just going to be those revolutions that you're getting. Now, from the actual implementation of how you actually wrap this, so if you put your thumb in the thumb loop, now I know some people will say don't use it, personal preference. It's gonna go around your thumb, and then the first part of your wrap is gonna come actually over the top part of your hand here. And as you can tell, I'm in this position. I'm gonna cock my wrist towards me and then come back around again to cover up that thumb loop. Now, by doing this, keep my wrist cocked this way, what's going to happen is when I go to actually bench press and I've got that heavy load in my hand's now no longer going to come backwards to where the barbell is behind my wrist. It's actually going to stay right over my wrist. But by cocking my hand down and pulled towards me, that's going to let me wrap it into that position. And then each revolution that I take is basically going to come halfway over itself, continuing to come down my wrist so that it comes down my wrist. It's not all loaded up in one spot. I've got pretty small forearms, so it eats up a good amount of my forearm pretty quickly. Somebody that has longer arms, you're probably going to want to go a little further down. But in general, by having that cock position, having that pulled nice and tight, now you can see that my wrist is again right over my elbow. I try to pull it this way, it comes just a little bit. If I try to go back behind me, I literally can't pull my hand back. If I push it back, I can a little bit, but again, the barbell is still going to be right over my elbow. Now, the issue that most people make when they're wrapping their wrists is that they just go around the wrist portion. So they don't cover the top part of their hand, which again, in powerlifting, this is not illegal, okay, as long as you're over here. Now, if you start to actually cover knuckles and things like that, then yes, that becomes illegal. But over the mid part of your hand, underneath the fat pad of your pinky and your thumb are completely normal and legal. And then as you keep that cocked, that helps. But what a lot of people do is they'll take it and they'll just wrap it literally around their wrist like this, and then what happens when they do it around the wrist, then their wrist can be really limp, okay? And they can't really do anything in terms of controlling what's gonna happen with the bar. If the bar comes back here, now it can very easily stay behind my elbow, which is not gonna be optimal for my pressing. I want to be able to have that so my wrist is straight. So make sure you're not focusing here just on the wrist, you're getting part of their hand, you're getting part of the thumb, you're getting part of that pinky fat pad, and then you're gonna move down, okay? The other thing here, when it comes to wrapping, is you can hold on to the strap here. So you can hold it here in between your thumb, and then again, first step is then gonna be over the top part of the back part of your hand, cock your wrist, you're gonna pull it all the way down, and you're just gonna keep your hand cocked in that position, moving that wrist wrap slowly down your wrist, just ensuring that you're in a nice spot, you got your hand where you want it, and then you're in a nice position. Now you can just let go of the thumb loop, and you no longer have to worry about it. Now, the only thing I don't like is how it sits there. That's why I don't do this, because it's kind of in the way, but usually some people will also try to put it underneath here and then wrap it underneath, and I've seen that done as well, and that keeps it out of the way. Usually you're gonna have to have a training partner help you do that, especially like in a meet, but this makes it a lot easier just to be able to let go. And it's really not that big of a deal, it just kind of looks obnoxious, right? But again, I still have the nice, same strong position here. Now, if you're wanting to wrap for your back squats, what I recommend is having a little bit of that wrist cock back. So if you think about when the barbell is back here, I actually do want my wrist to have some give, right? I don't want it necessarily always perfectly straight. I want a little bit of give just so that it's more comfortable on my wrist and my elbows. So again, if I go back to my normal thumb loop that I do and I'm doing my normal wrist wrap, I'm just going to make sure that my first initial wrap around my wrist isn't necessarily as tight as I can, but then once I start to work my way down, then I crank it a little bit tighter, keep that in position, and now I've got a little bit more wiggle room, okay, to be able to put that behind my back and have it where I want it, but I've got the exact same position. You can just tell how there's a lot less material up here by my hand, and there's a lot more at my wrist, which is where I'm going to need it for my squat if that's where I choose to have it. Okay, and the final part is here for deadlift, you really want to make sure that your wrist is nice and strong, okay? So I know Dave Tate has also probably talked about this as well. That's kind of where I got it from, is taking your hand and putting it on somebody and having your wrist wrap. Now, I don't have anybody here to do that, so I'm going to show you how you can do this on just a random implement or a rack. All right, so for this, all you're gonna need is a rack or something you put your hand against, and essentially we're gonna pretend like we're throwing a punch, okay? So I'm gonna take my wrist wrap the same way that I would. I'm actually gonna put it around my thumb this time, but I'm gonna come around the top of my hand here. I'm gonna make sure my wrist is nice and straight. Now by holding it in this position, I'm just going to bring it over, and as I do that, I'm gonna actually lean away from myself and come back, okay? I'm gonna hold it here, again, retighten, and come back. And then one more time, come across, and this is where it gets a little bit harder. You have to grab that, come here, and hold, and now I'm in a nice strong position where my wrist is going to be straight. I can let go of that. My wrist is in a nice strong position, so I go down to grab the deadlift bar. My wrist is not necessarily, it's going to have a little bit of wiggle room, but my actual part of my wrist is nice and strong, and I can make that longer so that my hand can stay in the position that I want. All right, that's gonna wrap up today's video on how to wrap your wrists to improve your bench press, but also to use it for your squat and your deadlift. The two key takeaways here, remember, are to keep your wrist cocked as you're wrapping it, and wrapping from the top of your hand all the way down to slightly below your wrist, and making sure you're getting a nice even displacement of all that. It's not all just right around your wrist, so that your arm and hand can just move wherever it wants. The second thing then is also going to be able to remember that as you're doing that, it has different applications depending upon what you want. So again, tapping in the hand and everything there, but if it's in the back of your back for your back squat, you want to be able to let your wrist around to move a little bit. And for your deadlift, again, it doesn't have to be super stiff, but you just don't want to have a nice quality support if you're going to use it for your deadlift. I appreciate you watching today's video. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. I'd be happy to help you out. You can also smash that like button and share this with a friend. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you at the next video.